All right, let's talk about a huge decision that pretty much every development team and agency is facing right now: choosing the right hosting stack for WordPress. And looking ahead, this isn't just some tech nerd choice anymore. It's a massive strategic decision for your business. So let's get into it. And it really all boils down to this one simple question. Are you just buying a service that gets the job done today? Or are you trying to build a real, long-term asset, an infrastructure that you actually own and control? That's the core choice we're going to break down.
For anyone running WordPress at scale, you're basically standing at a fork in the road. One path leads to a closed, carefully curated ecosystem. The other path leads to an open, totally customizable world. Both have their pros and cons for sure, but they're built on completely different philosophies.
So what are these two paths? Well, first, you've got your platform as a service, or PaaS. A great example is Pantheon. They take care of all the complex, messy infrastructure stuff for you and just hand you a ready-to-go stack. Then, on the other side, you've got cloud hosting, like AWS. They basically just give you the keys to the kingdom, all the raw infrastructure, and you get total control. Okay, but this is where it gets really interesting. What if you're looking at all that raw power from the cloud and thinking, man, I want that control, I want that scale, but I really don't want to give up the easy, streamlined workflows I get from a PaaS? Well, what if you could have both? Turns out there's a third way. And that's exactly where a tool like DevPanel comes into the picture. Now, the key thing to understand is this is not another hosting platform. Think of it more like a control panel that you plug right into your own AWS account. It takes all that raw cloud power and organizes it into those nice, clean workflows that developers love. You literally get the best of both worlds. So let's dive into our first big matchup: the classic battle of control versus convenience. And this really all comes down to a simple question: who actually holds the keys to your infrastructure? In a PaaS world, like with Pantheon, the deal is pretty clear. You're in complete control of your code and your content. But the infrastructure itself, the servers, the network, the physical locations, that's all controlled by the platform. And that can become a serious problem if you have specific security needs or, say, data residency rules you have to follow. Now let's flip that around. When you use something like DevPanel with your AWS account, every single resource is built inside your cloud. You have root-level access, total transparency. You can see everything. And the most important part, you dramatically reduce vendor lock-in because the infrastructure, the asset, is always 100% yours. And if we look at a side-by-side comparison, the differences really pop. That root-level infrastructure control, that's a huge yes for AWS and DevPanel, and a hard no for a traditional PaaS. You also get a built-in VS Code IDE right in your browser, which is a total game changer for developers. And while a PaaS may be super optimized for WordPress, the DevPanel model lets you build templates for pretty much any framework you can think of. Okay, let's talk about the money, because as your business grows, the cost model becomes one of the single biggest factors in this whole decision. And we've got to look beyond just that number you see on the monthly bill. Their pricing models are just fundamentally different. A PaaS usually has a bundled fee. One price covers the platform, the infrastructure, everything. It's simple, but it kind of hides the real cost of things. The Cloud plus DevPanel model is totally transparent. You pay AWS directly for exactly what you use, at cost, with zero markup, and then you pay a separate, clear fee for the DevPanel platform. This gives you levers to optimize your spending that you just don't get otherwise. And that transparency can lead to some honestly incredible results. According to the source material, DevPanel users have seen hosting cost savings of around 75%. 75! That's compared to some of the legacy enterprise platforms. That's a staggering difference, especially when you start operating at scale. And here's what that looks like in the real world. There was one big migration from a PaaS to AWS, and their annual hosting bill dropped from about $1 million a year down to under $200,000. That is $800,000 in savings every single year that they could pour back into their business. So what pushes a company to actually make a move like this? Well, the triggers are usually very clear business problems. Your PaaS costs are just skyrocketing as you get more traffic. That's a big one. Or you need to host a site in a specific country, but your provider doesn't have servers there. For bigger companies, it's often strict security rules or even a company-wide push to standardize everything on AWS. But look, this isn't just about cost and control. What about the day-to-day life of your developers? How do the workflows actually feel when you compare that walled garden of a PaaS to the open frontier of the cloud? This is where that hybrid approach really shines. DevPanel is designed from the ground up to recreate that amazing, streamlined PaaS developer experience, but it does it on top of your own AWS infrastructure. We're talking about things like isolated workspaces, reusable templates, and one-click cloud dev environments. It means your developers can get to work in minutes, which is just as good, if not better, than a traditional PaaS. Okay, so we've covered control, we've covered cost, and we've covered the developer experience. Now let's try to put it all together into a simple framework you can actually use to make the right choice for your team. It really just comes down to asking yourselves 4 key questions. First, scale. How many sites are you realistically going to be hosting in 2 years? Second, compliance. Do you have any strict rules you have to follow, like for government or healthcare data? Third, people. Who's going to manage all this? And finally, the big one, strategy. How much vendor lock-in are you okay with? If you just want the quick rules of thumb, here you go. If your number one goal is maximum simplicity for a handful of sites, a pause is often a great choice. It's totally fine. But if your priorities are controlling costs as you grow, having true ownership of your infrastructure, and maintaining flexibility for the long haul, then the AWS plus DevPanel model is almost always going to be the winner. And I think that brings us to this final thought, which just sums it all up perfectly. The choice you're making isn't really about technology. It's a strategic decision between optimizing for convenience right now versus building for flexibility way down the road. So, as you look ahead, the question is really on you. Are you going to opt for the curated service, or are you going to build your own asset on the open cloud? Which path will you choose? Thanks for watching.